If you look at the standard historical timeline, the modern world begins here. In the late 18th century, Britain fired up the first steam engines, mechanized its textile mills, and set off a chain reaction of global dominance. But half a millennium before those British mills were even a blueprint, another empire was standing on the exact same threshold. During the Song Dynasty in the 11th century, China possessed all the necessary components for an industrial breakthrough. This tech tree of Song innovations shows a society mass-producing iron and coal. They had movable type printing and harnessed early gunpowder. With the introduction of champa rice, their demographic ceiling shattered. Because this rice could be harvested twice a season, China's population exploded to 100 million people, providing the workforce required for factory labor. They had the fuel, the communication network, the metallurgy, and the labor pool.
Yet, all of these mechanical and demographic advantages failed to ignite a full-scale industrial explosion because of a single systemic vulnerability. The Song court deliberately elevated a class of scholarly bureaucrats while systemically weakening their military generals. They feared a domestic military coup more than a foreign invasion, leaving their northern borders drastically underdefended. That policy invited catastrophe. First, the Jin Empire swept down to conquer the northern half of the country, seizing vital coal and iron deposits. A century later, Mongol cavalry overran the rest of the empire, dismantling the Song's economic engine. Without those early industrial foundations, China stagnated technologically. By the 19th century, they were outgunned by European empires, equipped with steamships and mass-produced artillery, beginning an era of territorial loss and internal decline. But suppose the Song emperors realized their vulnerability after that first Jin invasion. Suppose they shifted their immense wealth and production capacity entirely into military modernization to protect their resources. Successfully fortifying that northern frontier does more than preserve the Song line. It anchors the birth of the modern world in the East, 5 centuries ahead of schedule. Let's project that forward to the year 1240. Instead of facing a crumbling, disorganized defense, Ögedei Khan's invasion force hits a wall of mass-produced iron-cast bombards and concentrated rocket fire. The nomadic cavalry is decimated by industrial-scale artillery. With the existential threat neutralized, the Chinese interior remains secure. Urban centers like Kaifeng and Hangzhou rapidly transition from commercial hubs into the world's first heavy industrial districts. To manage these sprawling factories, the state requires a different kind of expertise. They need engineers, accountants, and logisticians, a robust, educated middle class that derives its status from technical innovation rather than land ownership. The state responds by overhauling the imperial examination system. Instead of testing candidates exclusively on ancient Confucian poetry, they integrate applied mathematics, metallurgy, and civil engineering into the core curriculum. While this pivot toward technical merit likely sparked intense friction among the old guard, it allowed the Song to replace a static agrarian order with a self-sustaining cycle of heavy industry and state-backed innovation. But an industrial machine has an insatiable appetite for raw materials. Once domestic supplies of easily accessible iron and coal begin to thin out, the Song have no choice but to look out across the oceans. Rather than braving the vast, empty expanse of the Pacific, they send fleets of massive, steam-powered junk ships westward into the Indian Ocean, dominating the established maritime routes. As this map shows, Chinese trade lines quickly radiate outward, establishing merchant colonies in India and Ceylon. They eventually push all the way to the East African coast, systematically extracting its coal and iron to feed the homeland's furnaces. Fast forward to the late 15th century, when Portuguese and Spanish navigators finally round the Cape of Good Hope, desperate to find direct access to Asian spices. They arrive expecting to exploit disconnected populations. Instead, as the dotted lines on the map illustrate, European explorers slam into a towering, heavily entrenched Chinese naval network, equipped with advanced artillery and ironclad hulls. Faced with an entrenched naval power and a flood of superior manufactured goods, the burgeoning European empires find themselves contained.
They trade from a position of weakness, handing over their silver to participate in a market they cannot hope to dominate. By the 18th century, the geopolitical map is inverted. Beijing sits as the undisputed center of global finance, and Mandarin serves as the universal language of science and commerce. Yet, the mechanics of mass production carry a brutal toll, regardless of which culture holds the reins. The booming Chinese metropolises are surrounded by sprawling, overcrowded slums. Generations of rural migrants are packed into grueling factory jobs, and child labor becomes a daily reality to keep the loom spinning. The ecological cost is equally severe. Major waterways run black with chemical waste, and the skies above cities like Nanjing and Guangzhou are choked by a permanent toxic smog. The center of gravity shifted across the globe, but the cold, exploitative mechanics of mass industrialization remained exactly the same.
We often treat Western global dominance as if it were a guaranteed outcome of geography or unique European ingenuity. But the Song Dynasty had every tool they needed to beat Europe to the punch. They were stopped by a handful of poor administrative choices and the precise timing of a nomadic cavalry charge. The structure of our modern world isn't an inevitable destiny. It's a fragile historical accident, largely secured by a single medieval military failure on the northern borders of China.